I was 22 years old, and I was absolutely certain I knew exactly what I was doing. I want you to remember that detail, because by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly how wrong I was. It started with a map. Not a treasure map, nothing that dramatic, just an old water-stained trail map that my uncle kept folded in a drawer. The kind you'd find in the back pocket of anyone who spent their life wandering mountains instead of settling down. He'd marked one route in red pencil, a path up through a place called Kestrel Pass, and next to it, in handwriting so small I had to hold it up to the lamp to read it, he'd written 4 words. Never finished this one. That was it. That was the whole hook. My uncle, who had climbed more ridgelines than most people had climbed staircases, had never finished this one route. Of course I decided I was going to finish it for him. Now, you have to understand something about Kestrel Pass. It wasn't famous. It wasn't on any of the maps you'd actually buy in a shop. It was one of those routes that existed mostly in stories other climbers told each other. A narrow, brutal crossing between 2 ridgelines, high enough that the air got thin and mean, with a reputation for weather that could turn in the time it took to eat a sandwich. People who'd attempted it either turned back or didn't talk about why they turned back. I found 2 friends foolish enough to come with me. Daniel, who could read weather better than anyone I've ever known, and Marisol, who was, without exaggeration, the strongest hiker of the 3 of us and never once let either of us forget it. We set out in early summer, which felt smart at the time, and looking back, was probably the only genuinely smart decision we made in the entire trip. The first 2 days were, if I'm honest, almost boring. Beautiful, but boring. We climbed through pine forests that gave way to bare granite, filled our bottles from streams so cold they made your teeth ache, and camped each night under more stars than I'd ever seen in my life. Daniel kept checking the sky and muttering to himself, which we should have paid more attention to than we did. On the 3rd day, we reached the base of the pass itself, and I finally understood why my uncle had never finished it. The trail, and I use that word generously, narrowed into a ledge barely wide enough for one boot in front of the other, cut into the side of a cliff that dropped further than I wanted to look down and confirm. Loose rocks skittered off the edge every few steps and disappeared into silence long enough to make you wonder if it had actually hit the bottom at all. Marisol went first, testing every foothold like she was reading a language only she understood. Daniel went last, watching the sky the entire time like it owed him an explanation. We were maybe halfway across when the wind changed. I want to describe this properly because words don't really do it justice. One moment, the air was still, almost lazy. The next, it was screaming down through the pass like the mountain itself had exhaled, and the temperature dropped so fast I actually laughed out loud. The kind of laugh you let out when your body doesn't know what else to do with a shock like that. Daniel shouted something about a storm cell that had built up faster than anything he'd ever tracked. And honestly, at that point, none of us needed the technical explanation. We could see it. A wall of gray coming over the ridge like it had somewhere urgent to be. Here's the part where 22-year-old me made the decision that could have ended this story very differently. Marisol wanted to push forward. We were closer to the far side than the way we'd come, and in her mind, forward meant safety faster. Daniel wanted to turn back immediately, find any kind of shelter, wait it out. And me, standing in the middle of that ledge with rock crumbling under my boots and my uncle's 4 little words rattling around in my head, never finished this one, I sided with pushing forward. I've had almost 40 years to think about whether that was bravery or just plain stupidity, and I still haven't fully decided. Probably both. The storm hit us properly about 10 minutes later, and I mean hit. Not rain so much as ice thrown sideways, wind that tried to peel us off the ledge one at a time, visibility dropping to almost nothing within a few breaths. We roped together, which Marisol had insisted on before we even started the crossing. Thank God, because without that rope, I genuinely don't think all three of us would have made it to the end of this story. There's a particular kind of fear that doesn't feel like fear while it's happening. It feels like focus. Every single sense narrows down to the next handhold, the next foothold, the sound of the person ahead of you shouting back through the wind to confirm they're still there. I don't remember being afraid in the moment. I remember being unbelievably, completely present in a way I've rarely been since. We found the shelf about 20 minutes later. More luck than skill, honestly. A shallow overhang in the rock that Marisol spotted through the whiteout when the rest of us could barely see our own hands. We crammed ourselves into it, the three of us, packs and all, and waited while the mountain did its absolute best to convince us we'd made a terrible decision. The storm lasted just over 3 hours. It felt considerably longer. When it finally broke, the world outside that little overhang looked like it belonged to a different planet entirely. Everything was coated in fresh ice, glittering under a sky that had gone perfectly, almost mockingly clear, like the storm had never happened at all. And there, maybe 200 meters ahead of us, was the far side of the pass, the ridge my uncle had never reached. I'm not going to pretend the last stretch was easy. My hands had gone numb hours before. Marisol had a nasty gash on her palm from the rock we'd huddled against, and Daniel was rationing words the way you ration food when you're not sure how much you've got left. But we made it. All three of us, together, stepped off that ledge onto solid ground on the far side of Kestrel Pass just as the sun started dropping toward the horizon, turning the whole ridgeline the kind of gold you only ever see in the mountains right after something's tried its best to kill you. I sat down right there on the rock, pulled my uncle's old map out of my jacket pocket, completely soaked through, the ink half run from the ice and my own sweat, and I wrote 4 words of my own underneath his. Finished it. Thank you. I gave him that map when I got home. He didn't say much. He wasn't really a man of many words, but he kept it framed on his wall until the day he died. And every single time I visited, I'd catch him looking at it just for a second, with this small, private kind of smile. Marisol still hikes to this day, though she's slowed down considerably less than I have. Daniel became a meteorologist, which I've always found extremely funny given how that trip went for him. And me? Well, I still have my own copy of that map. And every summer, right around the anniversary of that crossing, I take it down off the shelf and I look at it for a while before I put it back. 22 years old. Absolutely certain I knew exactly what I was doing. I didn't. Not even close. But I finished what my uncle started. And along the way, I learned something that stuck with me for the better part of 40 years. The mountain doesn't care how certain you are. It only cares what you do when the wind changes. So, if you've got a Kestrel Pass of your own, some old unfinished thing calling to you from a drawer somewhere, go on. Just bring good people. And for heaven's sake, bring a rope.